Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a two-day visit to Poland at the invitation of his Polish counterpart Donald Tusk. This time, the visit is aimed at galvanizing the already warm and cordial bilateral ties shared between the countries. Interestingly, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's tour coincides with the New Delhi and Warsaw celebrations of the 70th anniversary of the formal establishment of diplomatic relations of the two nations. Over the last 7 decades, India and Poland have formed a robust partnership based on opposition to imperialism and racism, as well as a commitment to democracy and pluralism. It was Jawaharlal Nehru, India's first Prime Minister, who was instrumental in kindling ties in 1954. Morarji Desai then elevated the relations with Warsaw during his visit to the capital of Poland, all the way back in 1979. Now, after 45 years, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has touched down in Poland. Prime Minister's visit comes as bilateral ties have seen a massive surge. Both nations now share a comprehensive defense partnership. There are bilateral trade to the tune of $5.72 billion between both the countries. There are extensive investments and exchanges in aeronautics, mining, biotech, culture and education which are taking place. Thus, in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting with Donald Tusk, trade, investment, education, infrastructure and healthcare are high on agenda. Apart from this, the Prime Minister is also interacting with Indian community members in Warsaw, keeping alive his diaspora outreach tradition during his foreign tours. Amidst this landmark visit, we ask, what are India's priorities today? And will this visit usher in a new era of India-Poland ties? Let's start off this conversation. On the telecast with me is Patrick Train. Patrick, let's try to understand the visit that has been initiated by the government of India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi being sent to Poland. He's in Warsaw. He's touched down. What do relations between India and Poland look like in the coming future? Why do you think Poland is a strategic nation to have strong bilateral ties with?
Well, good evening, Megha. There are two important things. Number one, if you see the trend of India's relationship with European countries for a long period of time, it was centered around Western Europe. The Eastern European or the Central European countries were never given that kind of highlight, and invariably for reasons, because most of our trade had been with the Western European countries. So I think you see a fundamental shift in the last, say at least in couple of years, where you saw Prime Minister visiting Austria after his Russia visit, and now the Poland visit. I think Eastern Europe and Central Europe is going to play a very pivotal role in the times to come, especially because these are very challenging times for Europe, because there is a war looming, and there is no one can anticipate when the war or the conflict between Europe and Russia and Ukraine can spill over beyond the boundaries of Ukraine and go to rest of the Europe, and in which Poland may or may not be, but potentially can be a target. So coming from that perspective, I think India's visit, Prime Minister Modi's visit, is very crucial, because I think India has set a template in terms of being a reasonably successful country in a very difficult environment, in a very difficult neighborhood. So how you make sure that your relationships, even with your adversaries, are managed, maintained, and at the same time, continuity of growth, both economic and otherwise, given focus. I think that's a very, very important lesson today. I think India can tell to the European countries, because for far too long, it has been the other way around, the West telling us what is important for Asian countries to do. Having said that, I think it's also a balancing act in terms of the fact that Prime Minister went to Russia and the fact that India believes in strategic autonomy. Visit to Ukraine or countries like Poland, who are, no one can say that Poland is not involved in this conflict which is happening between Russia and Ukraine. Many of the bases are there, weapon systems are coming from Poland. So from that perspective, given the complexities of situations, I'm sure there will be certain messaging which Prime Minister Modi would also try to send out, that this is not an era of war. It is important for countries to sit and sort out issues. So I think it's an important visit. but let's not expect that invariably tomorrow you would have many takeaways from it. It is
Okay.
a developing relationship. Back to you.
Major General Shashi Asthana, it is all about optics. This is symbolic of what the message India wants to send out to the world, and particularly America and its allies in NATO. Keeping in mind the Ukraine-Russia war continues to be becoming more and more aggressive from the Ukrainian side this time around. And Poland has always come out in support of Ukraine, of NATO. And keeping in mind this time around the visits that Prime Minister Narendra Modi makes in Europe is in Poland and then in Ukraine.
See, the visit to Poland has to be seen in context of not only the Russia-Ukraine war, but in a bigger perspective. And the bigger perspective is, for a growing India, you need to tap all markets and you need to reach all corners of the world. And the Central and Eastern Europe was earlier also strategically called as the heartland theory. There is a strategic theory called as heartland theory, and this portion was the center of the heartland. The reason is also very simple. Even in the earlier Cold War and till now, you will find that gaining dominance over Eastern and Central Europe has been the cornerstone of both sides, whether it is the Russian side or it is the NATO side. So therefore, this is an important, strategically important area, number one. Number two, we need bigger markets. We need bigger areas to grow. And therefore, perhaps this is the first visit in 45 years, as you mentioned in the commentary, there is a need to upgrade the trade, which is at a suboptimal level of less than $6 billion. So apparently, there is a need to upgrade that as well. Thirdly, as far as the question which you asked, there is no doubt that we need to perhaps, being an impartial country, have to show signs as well. So there was a visit which included Eastern European country, Austria and Russia together, and then another Eastern European country, that is Poland and Ukraine. So this is how perhaps we have worked it out in a manner that we touch the Eastern European countries as well as we go both sides of the fence, that is on Russian side as well as on the Ukrainian side. I don't think there will be any difference in the message being conveyed. The message which was conveyed in Russia would perhaps be the same. That's a separate issue, that the war dimensions have increased or gone to an extent that perhaps this message may not gain that kind of importance, because I think both sides are trying to gain ground, and there is a tug of war going on with Russia, Ukraine's getting into Russia, and with Russia also extending a bigger push towards the remaining of the Donetsk region. So in this, both sides want to gain a little more before November if there is a change in the regime in USA. So this is the kind of situation. So I don't think will be anybody interested in negotiations. But the fact is that both sides have been fighting. We all know that nobody is going to win this war, and the war is not taking anybody anywhere. So therefore, it is, as was mentioned, it is an era of peace, and negotiations is the only answer. So this is a strong message which is relevant today, which will remain relevant tomorrow also, whether others listen or not. But I think we need to convey that, and perhaps that will be conveyed appropriately.
Okay, but the question, how important does India occupy a space in the current sphere of things in Europe with the war? Does it really matter if India were to go out there and whether he were to meet Putin, or and he goes about meeting Vladimir Zelensky as well? How do the optics look like here on is the question. Manand Vivedi also on the telecast with me. Manand, again, let's also, of the 3 days that the Prime Minister is going to spend in Europe, 2 of them have been allocated for Poland and 1 day in Ukraine. What can be understood out of that?
I personally feel that India has not been, it is generally projected and manifested that India has not been able to be very close to the European Union or the European countries. Apart from that, there is this particular idiom doing the rounds, that because of the anti-colonial hangover that the Asian nations have, as the colonial masters are the Europeans, a short shift has been given to bilateral and multilateral settings and relationships and partnerships with the European countries. But as far as the Eastern European countries are concerned, they never targeted India, they never colonized India, they were not powerful enough to colonize India. So that way, that brings in the all-important visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Poland. Here I would like to contend that as far as the defense relationship between India and Poland is concerned, they have given us around 75 ARVs, armored reserve vehicles, and they have also managed to modernize the T-72 M1 Indian battle tanks with imaging device, thermal imaging devices, and with other fire measures. Apart from that, a lot of exchanges have gone on as far as the defense field between both the countries is concerned. And what is to be remembered here is that though India never belonged to the Soviet Union's Warsaw Pact bloc during the Cold War, still the relationship led to the establishment of the Indian embassy in 1957 in Warsaw. And the Polish people also came into New Delhi as part of an embassy staff. So the general idea is that though India had a kind of a soft corner towards Russia since its independence, because of its idiom of strategic autonomy, and also because of its foreign policy of having a soft heart towards Soviet Union. That kind of an American umbrage or the Western or the NATO umbrage never impacted India-Polish relations. And apart from that, I personally feel that this time around, there is going to be a strengthening of economic relations between India and Poland. And India should be thankful to Poland also that it was during Operation Ganga a couple of years back, when the Ukraine-Russia war started, and the Indian cabinet ministers of the order of Hardeep Puri and Kiren Rijiju and Jyotiraditya Scindia, they did a Deshaton. They moved around countries, Eastern European communist bloc countries before the 1991 fall of the Great Berlin Wall. They went to countries like Moldova, Poland, Slovenia, and they were able to get the safe passage after Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a telephonic talk both with Vladimir Putin and also with Zelensky. So I personally feel Central Asia also needs to be brought into the discussion over here. India has once again, this is a general understanding, general perception about India's foreign policy and diplomacy, that Central Asia is a zone where China has more of an influence as far as groups such as SCO are concerned. So Poland can act as a good instrument. Poland can serve as an agent or an instrumentality through which India can have more of a maneuvering space, a more of a strategic space as far as the scenario in Central Asia is concerned. And we cannot but also say that since the Ukrainians have started their first ever incursion into the Soviet soil in Kursk and in places such as Belgorod and Bryansk, so the idea is that this is a very critical moment, that Russia might very soon in a few days start a massive counter attack into the confines of Ukraine, so that its initial ambition in Donbass and Donetsk is not thwarted by this particular Ukrainian measure, by this particular Ukrainian counter invasion or incursion.
No, of course, when everybody talks about the message of peace and the message of calm is what that needs to go out, and that's what the Prime Minister of the country has done, whether he's met with President Putin, or now he's going to be meeting with President Zelensky of Ukraine. How much of it actually gets, translated into what things stand at this point of time is the big question. Surinder Singh Lali, how India, which is in part of South Asia, which is way far away from the West, Europe, and suddenly you see that influx of these visits made by the Prime Minister in a number of countries in Europe. Should we just read it as something that is associated with what is happening between Ukraine and Russia? Or do we read it as something much bigger an impact for India to have perhaps come of age when it comes to its global stature and its relationship with its European counterparts?
Megha, I have to absolutely agree with you, because more than just it being a trip to Poland, it is of large, huge global significance of our message to the world that we don't wish to belong to Camp A or Camp B. You might have had your problems in the Cold War, but we are not here to inherit your problems and be a party to it. For us, we don't wish to be an ally, but to be a strategic partner. So India is dealing in a very independent manner. For us, the Chinese camp or the American camp or the European camp, it doesn't matter. What matters to us is our 1.4 billion people, our energy requirements, our youth. But Megha, let's understand one thing, that this is a very last minute trip. So I'm not expecting any big ticket, announcements anyways. But the biggest aspect, one of the biggest aspects of this is that, I feel that Central Europe is now the new Western Europe. And this is probably the best time to have made this trip, especially with Ukraine. Because now, you enter into one European Union country, you get access to the entire European Union. And with Poland, I think, defense, fruit processing, mining, IT, energy, terrorism, piracy, maritime security, and especially improving connectivity in the Indo-Pacific, Central Europe, and to the Western Europe, because, these are very important. The way China, with its wolf and warrior diplomacy, has been virtually, controlling countries through debt and other, factors. So for us also, access to the European Union, to various parts of Europe, and the trade routes are very important. And please understand one more thing, that, much has been said about this trip being after 40 years. Yeah, because in the last 40 years, both us and Poland have been work in progress. They have now been shifting from the east to the west. They become member of the EU, NATO, and as you know, they're a frontline state in this war. Even us, we've also gone through the process of economic liberalization. So the point I'm trying to make is that I don't think there has been any love lost or time, because this is the right time when both the countries can benefit from each other, because where else can Poland go in the world to find a country with 1.4 billion people and with such a large emerging middle class as a market for them, and that too especially under a democratically elected government. So I feel this is absolutely in the right place at the right time. Okay. Thank you, Megha.
Okay, all right. Patrick, coming back to you, and again, I'm going to repeat the same question to you as well. 2 days in Poland, 1 day in Ukraine. I don't think this is a last-minute trip that has been organized by the government of India for the Prime Minister to suddenly, incidentally, just go about coming down to Poland and meeting the president over there, and then traveling to Ukraine on a train trip and then visiting Zelensky. It's a well-calculated move. And what can be read in the division of the 3 days that have been demarcated, 2 of them for Poland and 1 for Ukraine?
Well, I think one thing is for sure, there will be more focus on Central and Eastern Europe. We must not forget Poland is an $850 billion economy. Austria, before that, where PM went, it is a $550 billion economy. So together, a $1.4 trillion economy almost. Huge opportunities. There are major tech companies which can invest in India. That's one part. But I think I repeat what I said before. I think it is important to remind countries like Poland and Austria, because everything they look at is from the prism of what NATO and America shows them. It is important for them to understand that when the Second World War hit Europe, they were the countries which suffered the maximum. It wasn't anyone else. It wasn't United States of America or Canada or Mexico. It was Poland. It was Austria. So I would say I would be very happy if this message goes that it is not, the onus is not just on Ukraine or other countries. The onus to the maximum must be on Poland, countries like Austria, to ensure that the war does not expand. Because if it continues to expand, the next line which will be hit would be Poland. And these meetings are not decided a day back. I'm sure it was a 6-month back it was decided. Kursk invasion happened in between. That's another issue. But all the more, that's the reason that this visit becomes very crucial, because I think we all can anticipate what is coming and what situation might be by 2025. Back to you.
Okay, all right, fair enough. A good point over there. Major General Shashi Asthana, again coming back to you, what is it in terms of bilateral ties, what in terms of trade ties, talking about also countering terrorism, countering online terrorism? All these issues are important. We talk about artificial intelligence, and there are countries across the globe who are coming together, forming these conventions, building about these global rules. And it is then becomes imperative for India to then go all out to a country like Poland to allow for these associations to be smoothened up, easier to have that sort of a equation which allows you to be at a level where you are not only just having trade associations but also cooperating with each other when it comes to taking up issues at the United Nations.
Certainly, that we need to, there is a fair amount of options available to both countries as far as technological cooperation is concerned. We are also looking at some defense cooperation and some joint ventures as well. There is also a talk regarding some training and military cooperation. And we are also looking at certain components of certain aircraft and helicopters from Poland. Wherever there is a commonality of equipment. Remember that they also have a fair amount of Russian equipment and do have a fair amount of spares as well. That's one issue. Secondly, I must tell you that as far as Poland is concerned, certainly it's the largest economy in the Eastern Europe. And when I said Eastern Europe, it's also one of the it serves as a gateway to Europe, to remaining Europe, because we are looking at the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. Now, when we follow this corridor, then we need to reach out to these countries, because thereafter from them, we can reach out to the Eastern, to the Central and the Western Europe as well. So that's another area where the partnership is going to is becoming important. And obviously, it's a apt time to remind. As far as this war is concerned, during Second World War, I think Prime Minister Modi is from Gujarat, and 1,000 children were given refuge in Gujarat and were looked after by the Maharaja. And even in Poland, there is a Maharaja Square, and there are 8 schools which are going on. I'm given to understand that some of the ambassadors who have come to India are from those schools and things like that.
Yeah.
So there is a fair amount of goodwill which already exists, which perhaps it's time to remind between both the countries that's how both countries played up and supported each other at the time of crisis.
No, absolutely.
Back to you.
You're absolutely right. So in this thing, like closing comments now, how do we move forward from here? The messaging is right. The visit is steeped in symbolism. The right messaging is going out to US and the NATO allies. And how is our balancing act right on the side of Russia?
I'm just going to add 2 points to conclude my point. Number one, as Major General Asthana rightly said, that we both are using the erstwhile Soviet, weaponry. So not only is it going to help us in the servicing and the modernization, but it will also help us in more research and development in order to create, because Poland is that way very strong. But my last point is that please understand, Megha, this is not the end. A prime minister's visit can set the ball rolling. So this is just the beginning of a new, alliance for us with in Central Europe after the Austria visit. Thank you.
Okay, and then Manan, how do you view this here on? Once the messaging goes out, what is it that Poland and other NATO allies are going to push for in terms of showing more cooperation, more friendly gestures towards India?
You're asking me?
Yes.
I personally feel that NATO, as far as NATO is concerned, it is always being a warring alliance. And, it was very much up to because of the legerdemain and the ministrations of the former American President Donald Trump, that he wanted NATO and he wanted European Union to fend for themselves, both financially, diplomatically, and militarily. So, I personally feel that India does not, to be very frank and precise, we still haven't reached that kind of a stature wherein we can have a direct impact on the shenanigans of NATO and how the Americans and the Western European countries like Germany, France, and Italy and Bulgaria, how they are supporting the Ukrainian war effort as far as the Russian invasion of Ukraine is concerned. But I once again would like to reiterate that because Ukraine has come out with a large attack on Kursk, Belgorod, and Bryansk. So, in such a circumstance, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit assumes a lot of critical importance and a great deal of significance. And India has been talking about it. Our external affairs minister has been telling the world, has been telling both Putin and Zelensky that there should be an end to the war, and Narendra Modi arrives in Poland and Ukraine with a peace message, with an olive leaf, where negotiations and diplomacy and maneuvers towards the high table diplomatic talk happen to be the standpoint or the official speak of the Indian foreign policy as far as Ukraine and Russia are concerned.
Okay.
But Zelensky, I have also reiterated it earlier, Zelensky and Kuleba, who visited New Delhi a couple of months back, they were very unhappy when at a particular point of time the Ukrainians and Ukrainian children in hospitals were targeted by a Russian missile and drone attack, and at the same point of time, Prime Minister Narendra Modi went on to hug Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
But
for more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.